Chuck, you want to talk about a movie?
Yeah, I got one more.
We'll start wrapping up.
Okay, this is one. It's Dark Star from
Yes.
1974, and
Yeah, I love it.
hilarious, fun movie. It was. I don't know if it was. I'm pretty sure it was the first feature that John Carpenter made.
I
But
think you're
yeah,
right.
just running by. Yeah, directed by John Carpenter,
Dan O'Bannon. Didn't he
written
help?
by John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, and
Who plays in it?
who plays a role in it, and just kind of going over it. This crew whose 20-year mission or whatever it is they go around nuking and destroying unstable planets in their ship, the Dark Star. Um, and it's a four-man crew. The Commander Powell is dead,
Yeah.
and he does turn up eventually, and he's like in cryogenic animation, and his body seems to like speak to the crew. See the
Isn't one of
main.
the characters named Pinback? Is that Dan
Yeah,
O'Bannon?
that's Dan O'Bannon's
That's
character.
a good band that named themselves after that character.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Not familiar with them. I might look for
Pretty
them.
newish, but good.
But
So tell us the saga of Dark Star.
But so they go around, they blow up these unstable planets with these AI bombs. There's a concept for you, AI bombs that they can have conversations with, and
Oh my God, bomb! What are you
yeah,
doing?
yeah. I must blow up.
There's
That's
a,
my
there's a,
job.
there's an even more hilarious sentient being that crops up later.
Yeah, and quite a few, and but I don't know, these four guys, and this this is very much a product of its era. It's just obviously stonerific,
Mhm.
stonerific comic dialogue, and
Zany humor.
and these guys who were kind of really at each other's throats a lot of the time, except for the one kind of Platonist dude who's up in this little dome on the top of the ship, and he doesn't come down much. And everyone seems slightly traumatized by their captain who was killed
Yeah.
and now in cryogenic suspension. But they've got all this stuff going on. There is not a real heavy plot to it.
No, it's just their capers in their ship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
they've
you
got
traumatized and funny.
they've got an alien. They've got this alien puttering around somewhere who
Describe
is
the alien.
the alien is basically like, I don't know, a beach ball with feet.
Yeah, like
It's
kind of like
it's
duck
like
feet,
it's like just
and that's what it
web-footed
is. That's what they
beach
made.
ball. Yeah,
But it's
yeah, it's just
sentient. It's living. It can walk and crawl and shit.
walk and crawl, and assault poor Pinback, and who is the guy who absolutely cannot stand this alien, but he's kind
Isn't
of
that
put in
Dan
the
O'Bannon?
position.
Isn't Dan
Yes,
O'Bannon Pinback? Okay,
yes,
cool. The
and
main character.
Dan O'Bannon is kind of in the process of trying to corral this alien and feed it. And the alien is completely antagonistic toward him, but the ship computer kind of continually reminds him that, well, it was your idea to bring this on the ship because you felt like the ship needed a mascot.
Oh God.
And some mascot it turns out to be. But
The bomb scenes are really hilarious.
the bomb scenes are fantastic, and it's just like I think
Like these guys can't do anything right. They've got
no,
smart bombs and they're arguing with them. I mean, instead of
yeah,
like getting it done.
yeah, and I think toward the end there ends up being this big intense discussion between the captain of the ship, who's like I think he was a surfer when he was a surfer on Earth, but he's out there trying to convince this bomb that's stuck in the bomb bay not to go off and kill everybody. And the bomb argues that it must explode. And so he gets in this long existential argument with the bomb, and the
Yeah.
bomb finally decides not to explode and goes back up into the bomb bay, but then develops a god complex, and
This
then
this
things
is
get a little
so
worse.
fucking 70s, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
it's
Lord.
got early 70s stamped
It's like
all
They
over it.
probably eat granola on the ship.
it feels like outlaw cinema in some kind of way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny because it's a cheap science fiction movie that rather than be impeded by the fact that it's cheap, they find a way to be really inventive with it, and
Yeah.
it looks good in its
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And
I think the
It's
ship looks
consistent.
good.
Yeah, it's consistent. That sometimes that's all you need is consistency in your look.
Yeah.
They can take a character, so to speak, like the bomb or the beach ball, and
Yeah.
they look cheap, but the idea behind them is so strong, and the writing around them is strong and funny that you
Yeah.
accept them, even though they look just like really cheaply made. But you're like, yeah, this is some weird alien, and this bomb really talks, and this is weird,
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't seen Dark Star since like the
ridiculous.
mid '80s, so I'm trying.
I've
I'm
seen it
working
in
on
about
memory.
10 years.
Yeah.
I don't own it anymore.
Yeah. I think I first saw it in the maybe mid to late 90s. It was around the time my roommate and I were watching a lot of films, and I think that might be the first time we saw it, and we got a kick out of it.
I can't remember if I rented it back in those days or not, but I bought the VCI DVD when it came out. It was a slightly longer cut than the theatrical, and it's kind of the common cut now. But I don't know I don't know what its status is on Blu-ray. I'm pretty sure it's on Blu-ray, but I don't know who put it out or what it's got on it. But
If I got it, I would want it with director's commentary.
Oh yeah, that'd be
Carpenter's
a
always
Sure.
amusing.
Yeah.
I think Dan O'Bannon did a commentary on the VCI DVD. They could port that over because he's deceased.
Oh wow, yeah,
I might be wrong, but I seem to remember.
Yeah.
It would have been great.
So that's a good one, Chuck.
Yeah,
Any final verdicts?
that's all I got.
It's enough, man. Keith, you have a second one we talked about.
Yeah, we did, and I'm sitting here and I'm contemplating: do I want to do it or do I want to save it?
If you want to do
Or
something different, do it. Just
well, the thing is, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking it would really work well as a twofer with the Hellstrom Chronicles on one episode, right? I'm just, it's up to you. You want me to go ahead and hit it? I can go ahead.
Do you have another alternate in your head at all? I can do one and then let you do one if you figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got one because I've been thinking I'll mention it. I was gonna do phase 4, and I can. It's just as the more we've been talking tonight, I've been kind of thinking this kind of maybe deserves a little more emphasis.
We talked about it on the last session.
Yeah, with
that could be a good pairing with the Hellstrom
Chronicles and kind of talk about the two of them together.
Okay.
But I'm happy to talk about it if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead. I got one that actually will be short. It's a recent movie, but it's
okay. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do is maybe in a future show we'll talk Hellstrom Chronicles at some point, and I'll reference. I mean, it'll inevitably wind up referencing this. But so phase 4, what I'm sitting here as I like to do.
I got
this
that.
one. This is the Olive Films Blu-ray, and I'll just mention I don't know what the rights issue is with this movie, but over in England they have these beautiful multi-disc versions of these with all kinds of extras and booklets and stuff. And here in America, all we ever get is this. And I'm happy to have it.
Olive has good prints.
Yes.
No extras usually.
Right, exactly. And I'm
Hanny Calder looked great, but where's the extras?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Arrow goes over and above to get extras on there. I mean, it's just gorgeous product out of there. Shout tends to go over and above with stuff. And these are just plain Jane. I like it for the fact that I get a good quality print but man, I'm jealous of those in England and what they get over there, because something about the rights on Phase 4, they're able to get all kinds of cool stuff going with this thing. So maybe one of these days I'll get myself a region free player.
I have one, but I can't
You
rely
know,
on it. It's a little
yeah.
messed up.
But anyway, Phase 4, for those of you who have not seen it, Chuck, have you seen it? I'm assuming you have.
I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
You know what it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
this is for me. Let's do a little Gonzo talk here. For me, Phase 4 was one of those movies nobody knew about but me. It's
Yeah.
I don't know why it obviously tanked at the theater, but I don't know why, but I always seem to find it on television at some point, and
Yeah.
every single time, starting from being 10 years old, if it was on, I'm glued to it. This thing just freaked me out so good. I mean, in all the good ways. It's a mind blower type of movie. It's, I think, the only movie Saul Bass ever directed. Saul Bass is well known for his graphic work. Doing like opening title sequences and stuff for movies. If you've ever seen like I'm sure you have, Anatomy of a Murder,
Yeah.
Otto Preminger's movie, and
Yeah.
that wonderful opening sequence with the pieces of the body all in silhouette that are real abstract, being boom bum 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 with that blasting music, bum 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 bum, and Saul
Yeah.
Bass did that, right? And there's a lot of classic opening segments like that Saul Bass animated. And so for whatever reason, he's the director of this thing, and it is a total pardon my French, mind fuck movie. That's what it is. And we're dealing with ants of high intelligence, and um, it doesn't club you over the head with explanation or anything. There's a lot that's implied about it, like possibly we're talking about an alien interference here that that does this. Possibly, maybe the maybe the ants themselves, maybe they're aliens, or maybe they're influenced by aliens, or maybe there's no aliens at all.
I felt like
Maybe
something had increased their intelligence.
nothing
Something.
specific, nothing
No, you
named
don't see it,
specific.
but I feel
That's what I'm
that's the
saying.
feeling I got.
Everything is so it's so just implied, which is one of the things I love about it, because
Yeah.
it doesn't club you over the head explaining it all, which means you're trying to figure it out, which engages you as a viewer.
The characters are trying to figure it out too.
The characters are trying to figure it out, you're trying to figure it out, and it's one of those things where it's not frustrating as the viewer to not understand for sure what's happening. Like I said, yes, something has happened, but we don't know if this is like a punctuated equilibrium type situation where evolution has just jumped real fast. We don't know if it's an alien interference kind of a thing, or if these are aliens themselves. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's never fully presented to us. All we do know is that this is an example of an alien intelligence, meaning in this case, not human.
Right.
Okay, not alien planet,
Mammalian.
but the fact that insects do not think the way we think, right?
Right.
So they are collectively smarter than us. And so that's what's going on in this. And so what you have is some scientists trying to study these ants, because they start noticing that they are acting differently than they're supposed to. The way they're building their mounds are like these hypergeometrically shaped things. They're larger. They're becoming a little bit more aggressive, not in like a monster movie kind of a way necessarily. It's not like Empire of the Ants or something like that, but they are becoming more aggressive, and if they are threatened, they can become very deadly very quickly as a collective group. And because imagine a bunch of ants with intelligence that when they get collectively together increases, and they start acting smarter than humans,
Their
which
hive
means
mind.
that hive mind starts plotting and planning and all that kind of stuff, right? So over the course of this movie, you've got these scientists. They set up like a study center, and they're trying to study these ants. They're still thinking of them just as ants, insects. They're still treating them as insects. The reality is, as you're watching this, you start realizing the ants are kind of studying the human. Okay, so kind of it's actually the reverse
Right.
what we think is going on. They're actually studying the humans, right? And the ants are also willing to sacrifice some of themselves for the higher purpose of figuring
Right.
all this out. So there is a point where, like, there's this one scientist who starts to kind of go crazy, and they're stuck in there, the older scientist
Who's
guy.
the tell me who's the star, the male star, remind me.
What's
Somebody
his
I know.
Yeah. He was in tons of things back then.
It's not Bradford Dillman, is it?
Michael Murphy, that he and Nigel Davenport.
No, I know Nigel Davenport.
Yeah, he's the older guy, but Michael Murphy, he was a very
Don't
generic
yeah.
leading man type, but he was in tons of things, TV and movies.
But
You know,
remember, tell us who the female lead is. Lynn
sorry,
Frederick.
Lynn Frederick, yeah.
She is one of the most exquisitely beautiful women ever on
Yeah.
film. And she
Yeah,
was married to Peter Sellers, of course.
right.
Wow.
Married
Exactly.
this asshole.
Her character, well, her character Kendra is very important to eventually what happens. Okay, I want to mention, once again, this guy Michael Murphy.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he's to me, he's of the Michael Sarahs, and you bring it back to my guy. He's of that same kind of guy. He doesn't really have a lot of charisma. He's very handsome, and he's doing a lot of things, but he never really became big because I don't think he had a lot of charisma on screen, but he had something that kept getting him cast. And this may be one of the better things that I see him in, because he's the young guy. He's got the old guy. Old guy's kind of going crazy. He starts to kind of sabotage stuff. He's gotten bitten by the ants. Turns out these ants, their poison, or is it poison? Venom has gotten a little more powerful. So it's kind of getting infected, and and he's doing that. But anyway, these ants are doing things. I mean, they take out like some cattle. They take out an old farmer and his wife, and the daughter is Kendra. You were just talking about Lynn Frederick, and but she gets saved, supposedly. And that's one of the big reveals, later on in the movie, that there may be a little bit more than just getting saved with her, but we'll talk about that later. But one of the things that gives you the indication that these ants are more than just what we think of as ants, but are each much more intelligent, is they actually figure out that the humans need the AC in the because they're out in kind of like almost like a desert area, in that in their little makeshift science lab there that they have built. So those ants, they work together to basically shut down the AC and trap these people in there. They can't leave because the ants will get them. They can't get it. And the ants are smart enough to actually build reflective sand castles basically around it to make it even hotter in there by reflecting the sun. That's how smart they are. So turn off the AC, reflect that sun on there, and let's basically smoke these guys out, kind of a thing. Ultimately, yes, we get to a point at the end where there's communication that happens finally. Okay, the female is in some capacity communicate. They're the ants and her. They're like symbiotic, and they communicate. Again, not fully explained, but there's a point where we do have some visuals that indicate she might have some of them inside of her, you know, at that point. And so ultimately, what it is coming to is a point of the realization by the viewer and by the Michael Murphy character. His character's name is James Lesko. Is the realization that humanity is not top dog anymore. These ants are now the alpha on this planet. They are the apex.
Yeah.
And the realization, kind of like with Colossus, the realization that our time is kind of done unless we figure out how to coexist now with them in a submissive way. And what's missing from most versions of it is the rather extended surrealistic endpoint. And this movie is surrealistic in a lot of ways, but the ending that was cut from the theatrical is even more so. It's a very long extended sequence that Saul Bass edited and animated together that includes the male and the female basically coming together in what is kind of in a coital way, symbolically, and I have no idea what all it means, but there's visions and things. There's birds flying and sunrises and all this imagery. But ultimately, I do think on the theatrical and on that, the end point is to say that we as humans are kind of done, and we are now having to move into a new, if we are to exist, we're now going to need to coexist in a symbiotic way with these ants who do want us to function in that way, because we have fingers and thumbs and are more, and we can do things that they need us to do for them. And so it would be a subservient role, but symbiotic with them. And I think that's ultimately where it's going. It's like we are in a new evolutionary period now, and that it started in this little small way, but now that's the next step. We're not going to be taking them out, is ultimately the point.
Can you tell the audience what is different about this movie cinematically that was not possible technologically until this time period? Makes it realistic.
Well, yeah, that is that ability to get down with the miniaturized camera and actually film real insects, real ants doing the things that they do, and getting down inside the actual ant hive or mound or whatever, and and getting some of that stuff up on the big screen, I can't imagine is also just, I haven't ever seen this one on the big screen. It never makes revivals because most people don't know it exists. And I lived most of my life, feeling like I was the only person who knew this movie exists. So, that's the advent of modern internet culture, is to just not only and media culture is to rediscover things like this, but also discover that other people also know this movie exists. And
highly recommended.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a weird one. It's surreal in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie, as opposed to some of these others. Like I said, I think Colossus is a perfect movie. I think Kiss Me Deadly is a perfect movie. It's not a perfect movie, but it is definitely one of the most thought-provoking movies. I went out and because of this movie, tracked down pre-internet Barry Malzberg's novel Phase 4 to read that, and that helped me, I think, to understand a little bit more of what was going on. So it's a good novel too.
Is it based on the novel or vice versa?
I'm not 100% sure. That's lost in my memory as to whether one of them came before the other. I think it's the movie itself may be based on the novel, but I don't want to say that for sure without looking it up. I mean, quick Google search, I'm sure I could find that out. But anyway, it's one of those that there's a few little things, like there's a few effects that don't quite work There's you know,
It
and
is ambitious.
yeah, there particularly the I'm thinking like I think there's a where like a human body gets all burned up in the truck or something, and it's pretty obvious it's a mannequin, kind of, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Um, but generally
Uh-oh.
interesting, you know, effects.
Okay. He froze for 1 second, but
Oh,
we got the
that's
word interesting, so we're good.
yeah.
Let me finish out so we can wrap up. I have one I saw recently. It's a relatively recent movie. It's called Harbinger Down. Have you guys heard of it at all?
No.
I've not heard of
Okay.
Harbinger Down.
Okay,
No.
so do you remember the 2011 prequel quasi reboot, whatever, of the thing called? Really intellectually took a lot to come up with this title called The Thing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Have you seen that? Because
Yeah, I've seen
I heard
it.
it's trash.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's
wouldn't
what
say
I've heard.
I wouldn't say it's trash, but it doesn't justify its existence.
Well, here's what happened. That movie was originally going to have almost 100% practical effects, not digital. And so what happened is the two guys, it was like AD Productions or something similar to that. One of them was Gillis, who became the director of Harbinger Down. And these guys were both just huge fans of and experts on making practical creature effects. And this was like, for them, a great gig because they thought, well, it's called The Thing. A lot of people see it. So they worked really hard. And then the producer's like, no, you're fired. At the end, they're like, no, we're not gonna use any of your stuff. I mean, they probably paid them while they were doing it, but
Right.
and they replaced it all with CGI. And according to, I mean, I don't know if it's because they're angry about it, because I haven't seen the movie, but according to them, it's like very bad CGI because they had rushed to put it in there. So basically, it's like an executive made a decision that made no sense whatsoever.
Right.
Anyway, so these guys, they kept all their equipment and effects and creatures, and they made more creatures, and basically they made an homage to John Carpenter's Thing, but it's not a remake.
Right.
But it has a lot of similar beats and tropes. So it's about this ship called the Harbinger, and it's way up in the frozen, north. I can't remember if they're near the pole or Alaska or somewhere. I really can't remember. And but they're going there to get, they're on a fisherman's trawl. So they're going this massive thing, and then they're going to go back all the way to the shore. So it might be Alaska. And so they've got this giant thing festooned with crabs that people are going to eat eventually, they think. And but the beginning of the movie, before we get to the Harbinger, there's a quick prelude, just like in The Thing. You see the quick thing, which I think the flying saucer looks incredible in The Thing, and it crashes, and then thousands of years later you get to our story. So it's not as long this time. What it is a Sputnik-like ship with what looks like a Russian pilot solo starting to burn up in the atmosphere, and he can't control the ship. And it says it takes place June 25th, 1982, which was the release date of John Carpenter's The Thing. So there's a lot of little homages, but
Yeah.
anyway, he crashes in Antarctica. So, okay. So I'm thinking, what's this guy got to do with a creature? Okay, we'll figure it out. So on the Harbinger, it's basically all not very known actors. It's not a huge budget, but it is very well done. It's serious. It's not cheesy. It's not 100% verisimilitude, but it's got some strong performances. Captain Graff is played by Lance Henriksen. He's the only star in the movie. And then this woman named Sadie plays his granddaughter, and she's kind of the main character. And they have a kind of a motley crew, and one of the crew of different races, and they have different functions on the Harbinger ship, and they all kind of know each other. But one woman who's relatively new to the crew is this very tall Russian woman named Svetlana. And I recognized her, but I couldn't find a link to her in Wikipedia. I don't think she's very big. I think I just must have seen her on TV on something. It's a minor role. She's very striking, and I don't know if she's really Russian, but she's very Aryan looking. But she's very beautiful, and that's not an endorsement of Aryans, okay, y'all. And do not endorse that ideology. But so uh, she's there, and she's always got kind of a sarcastic quip for everybody else. How our main character Sadie gets there, she goes with her professor and her roommate, who are both working on a thesis. It's kind of like in the beginning of Candyman, the white girl and the black girl, and they're working on the thesis, and they've got the crazy professor. So they kind of have that little angle that remind me of Candyman. So the professor's really an asshole. He's like he was an actor I recognized, but I wouldn't recognize his name. He's a character who's like a total dork. He's like a total control freak. He has no social skills. He's very rude. He thinks it's all about him. He thinks he's funny. He looks real nerdy, and not in a good way. And so they discover this thing. They discover in this giant block of ice. They're like, "What is this thing? It's getting ready to just hit the ship, not crash or anything or hurt it." And Lance Hendricks is like, "Okay, well, let's go ahead and pull it on board. It could be something important, whatever, And so they pull it on board, and immediately the professor guy's like, "It's ours. We're taking this back to where we came from, frozen or unfrozen. It's like our discovery." And the captain's like, "No, actually, it's my granddaughter Sadie's discovery, because she was the one who's like scientifically told us what it was, because she's much more brilliant than her professor, which is driving the professor just insane." And so and then Lance Hendricks' character, Captain Graff, he's basically like, it's mine, it's my ship. And so everybody's like basically telling the professor guy to go fuck himself, but he's a sneaky motherfucker, and he is going to try to go and meddle with the thing. Well, a couple of the crew members distract him. It's kind of cheesy at this part. They distract him by pretending to be in awe of his intellect and start asking for advice, like psychological advice, as to why there are these rough, misanthropic guys here out at sea, and they don't relate to most people. They're angry. So he just starts philosophizing. So Sadie and her roommate go, and they actually get to where the thing is opening, and they find the frozen corpse of the Russian pilot. And they start to poke around, and they get a sample. And from there, it's just a lot like the thing, and in the sense that it doesn't possess you and make you an amalgamate of it per se. But they determine that it's a composition that's not of this earth, and that can actually metabolize any kind of matter, any kind of mammalian species, fish, birds, plants. It doesn't seem to be able to do it to humans fully, but it could mimic them. It can reach out and like communicate with them and spread like a virus. So they're not sure if it has an intelligence per se yet. Maybe it's just fungal, but it seems like it has a purpose. So it must have an intelligence, because somehow it's been reading all these species with its ability to kind of spread through things down to the DNA level. And so that's what it starts doing. And so you starts forming these crazy creatures, out of the astronauts' remains, and then out of just random, matter that's compatible with it, like water and things like that, and dirt, and your average. It can, but it gets strong enough to bend metal, and it starts having a lot of tentacles. So then it really becomes like that. So the professor, it comes open at one point, and then gets away, and it sprays its stuff all over almost everybody. So now all of them are probably infected with it. So they could become like hosts of it, remote hosts of it, not the main intelligence, but they could merge with it. So we find out two key things: that Svetlana actually works for Soviet intelligence, and even though there's no Soviet Union and no KGB anymore, they're still spies, and they want her. They planted her all along to go with them to find this thing, to find their cosmonaut, because they figured something weird happened to him 30 years ago or whatever. And the other thing is, she's got a trawler coming to pick her up in a half hour of Russian soldiers. And when she got on board, while everybody else was just messing around, she planted 2 bombs. So she's going to kill everybody and leave them, and the Russians are going to reunite. They're going to get away from this thing. Well, things don't quite go right. They're trying to see like where the epicenter of this splash where they all got infected, and she puts the black guy. There's like one black character, and sadly, it was kind of a throwback to the thing, but also something that a lot of people now would be like, "Oh, that's on PC." But he's like the wisecracking guy, and the funny guy, and of course, he's the first to die. So it's like several black character cliches. That was one of the few failings of the script, I thought. But he's like, "It's not in me, it's not in me," and he hates the Russian chick. He's like, "It's not in me, you bitch," and then he just sprouts open, and the thing grabs her, and she's shooting. She's armed, and so the captain and them take possession of her bomb triggers that she had in a bag, and she's fighting the thing. It drags her through a tunnel, and it starts to assimilate her. So the next time you start to see the beat creature, it is a little more like the thing that has part of her features. And so yes, one by one, these characters are either murdered by the tentacles or start to get sick and gravitate toward the thing because it's starting to sprout in them. So their objective is to find the bombs, throw the bombs into the ocean, and get the hell out of there as soon as possible, if possible. And they've got like a liquid nitrogen, and so that could freeze this being at certain point for certain periods of time, because obviously it was frozen a long time. So they got one guy who's manning that, and this guy's got kind of a crush on Sadie, so he keeps tagging on with her, like a puppy dog. And he's kind of the key guy. Because he's got the gun with the nitrogen, and everybody else starts getting whacked, and it's fairly gory, not extremely gory, but the effects are incredible, very weird, very, very bizarre. They're not like, other than the tentacle part and the absorption, they're not like the thing. They're not structured the same way as Botine stuff. They look different. They have a different texture. But
Well, it sounds interesting.
they're implacable. And so to make a long story short, essentially you get down to where there's just a tiny amount of survivors, and one guy is trying to bend the metal that the being bent so that they can start steering the ship manually, because it took all the electricity out. So, and they're just gonna go. And so Sadie's gonna pilot it. And of course she doesn't understand why her grandfather won't pilot it, but it's because he got splashed and he's now starting to feel it within him. And so he wants the guy to be around and freeze him at the key moment. And that guy gets whipped away and killed. That surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting him to be the quote unquote hero, but of course it switched up because Sadie was the main character. And so she's the one now who has the high nitrogen, and she's like, freeze me, kill me, destroy me at the right moment. And he's like, but just keep doing the ship. And she's like, he's dying. The being starts to attack him, and he's spraying it. He's cussing at it and screaming at her to not be afraid. And so she doesn't know what to do, but just go forward. He's like, ice the thing up. And so they're near a giant iceberg. So manually she steers the ship straight into the iceberg. And it goes way into the iceberg with force. And then it's kind of quiet. She manages to jump off the side of the ship onto like a little ice cliff, and she's kind of laying there, kind of beat up, but alive. And you don't know what's happened inside that iceberg. You don't know if the being's frozen. That's obviously what they hoped. And you hear her radio, because she kept grabbing the radio in every scene, taking it with her just in case. Like sometimes she would forget it and she'd go back in and grab it, which I thought was actually a realistic aspect. And so she hears the helicopter rescue's coming because they did send out a signal a while back, but they didn't know what was going to happen. And they didn't know the Russians aren't there. I don't know how much time has actually elapsed. And she's just, there's an incredible crane shot of her just laying on the ice alive holding the radio, and it just goes up, 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 way, way up, like almost in the atmosphere till she becomes like a little speck on the ice. And that's kind of, you don't really know, you don't know if she's infected. Of course, that's a thing like aspect.
Right. Yeah.
They strongly imply that she was never infected, but I'm sure they want to be in your mind that it's possible. Because she wasn't near ground zero, or she was never near ground zero when the thing like sprayed shit. Everyone was eventually, but her. Because the being thought she was cute. And she was. And yeah. So basically it's like an homage to the thing, John Carpenter's version. And I liked it. Its own story. It's very tight. It's very suspenseful. It's not a long movie. Hendrickson, of course, is great and has a lot of gravitas. And the young girl who plays Sadie is believable. You know, she's not like, just because she's pretty, she's not like, oh, this girl can't be this brilliant, you know, archaeologist or whatever she's studying to be. But she is. She sells it, you know, and she's a survivor. And so she's the final girl in yet another horror movie. So that was my little thing I saw recently. I just stumbled upon it. And
That sounds cool. I'm going to look for that one.
yeah, it's on Tubi, free. So I immediately looked for it there, and it's there. So
Yeah, I don't like Tubi because I hate commercials.
well, there's a way to combat that on your laptop, but it's involved. And there's
Yeah.
Tubi